Okay, good evening, everybody. This is a bit odd for me. Mike is not here tonight. I've been left a list of instructions about how to do this. I'm assuming that I am live to the nation, but I don't know for sure. So if one of you guys wants to post me a little comment just to make sure that you can all see me and all hear me, and I'm not just going to sit for an hour talking to Alison in my front room with nobody listening. So Mike's hoping to join the chat soon. He's on a mission with a group of people carting around somewhere in Scotland. Thank you, Ian. You can see me, fantastic. So Mike's hoping to join soon. He is driving. He is going to try and pull in and join the chat. So at some point he will spring up. But until then, it's just me and our guests. So tonight we've got Alison Milne from the Crafty Maltsters, sorry. So we're going to get her on and she'll let you know what she is all about. Let us know what you've got in your glass tonight as well, guys. Ta-da! There's Alison.
Hi, everyone.
Okay, so like I said, you are from the Crafty Maltsters. I keep wanting to call you the Crafty Distillers. I don't know why. I've got it stuck in my head, but you're from the Crafty Maltsters. So for the guys at home who maybe aren't familiar with what you guys do you want to just maybe introduce yourself, all about you, and what do you do at the Crafty Maltsters?
Of course, and Crafty Distillers is better than the usual one, which is Crafty Maltesers. Maltsters seems to be a hard word to write and to say. So yes, Crafty Maltsters it is. I'm Alison, and the Crafty Maltsters are only two really in number, in that it is myself and my husband Dan. And I think it's probably important to give you the background by starting at the very beginning, in that this Crafty Maltsters journey started quite a long time ago. My husband and I are both at least 6th generation farming families. So we've been involved in the growing of barley for a very long time. And I think it's fair to say that both of us have a real passion for the farming industry, everything that it stands for, the quality of our produce, the land management aspect of things, and also the crucial role that we play in the food and drink industry. And that's really where the idea for Crafty Maltsters stemmed. We were looking at ways to add value to the farm business, that old saying that everybody uses around legacy and what we're providing for the next generation. And we looked at a few different options in terms of adding value. And we are predominantly a cereal growing farm, although we do have livestock as well. So we started looking at what options we might have around the cereal supply chain, and malting barley was the obvious place to start for us. And I, at that time, was working for the National Farmers Union and with Tennent's Lager, and really looking at their supply chain and working out for them how they could get closer to their growers and get that provenance coming through. And it quite quickly became apparent that that's really challenging, because the malting industry is fairly industrialized and commoditized. So to drive that provenance and that traceability through is really difficult when you're working with multiple farms across the whole of the country. Not to say that there's anything wrong with that. That's what our barley industry is based on. But we felt that there was an opportunity to do something different, particularly with the rise in craft brewing and distilling industry. So we thought it was worthy of exploration, and quite quickly figured out that there was nothing in the UK. In a Scottish context, there was one other farm business that had a malting facility, fairly focused on flour, but they did produce malt as well. So we had to look at America and what was happening there, and realized that there was a growing craft malting industry there, trying to promote exactly what we were, that provenance, that value of the barley and the role of the farmer. So that's where the journey started. It got derailed along the way, having another child, various concerns around the capital investment costs, very challenging to try and source equipment, because when you don't really have a craft malting industry, that means that the equipment isn't out there. So it took us quite a long time to really get to grips with a business model that was going to work. And we came across an Italian manufacturer, went across and visited, had a lovely Prosecco lunch, which was a very good sales tactic on their part. For me, anyway, maybe Dan less so. And we'd done a bit of market research as much as we could, but given that there was nothing to really benchmark ourselves against, it was quite difficult. So I suppose what we really did was took a leap of faith. And the leap of faith was based on an absolute belief that the barley that we grow has a value beyond the commodity marketplace, and that we could use that to add value to brewing and distilling customers. And a big part of what we were doing was about looking at why the barley matters, what is its potential in terms of flavor differentiation. So we developed close relationships with the James Hutton Institute, which is the crop institute in Scotland, and started growing heritage grains of barley. And over the last 4 years, we've grown those up to the point that we had enough to malt, and they're now being supplied to various brewers and distillers across the country. And I should have said it's a 4-ton malting system that we've got. So teeny tiny by comparison to the bigger maltsters.
That is quite a small scale, but I guess if you're dealing with heritage crops, are you growing them on a smaller scale anyway? Are they harder to grow? The reason we've moved away from the reason we moved away from them is because they were harder to grow. You get less, you get less of a yield with a heritage crop. You've got maybe more of a higher nitrogen content and a lower sort of starch content, so less of an alcohol yield. Is that right?
Yeah, so definitely you have to compromise from a yield perspective, but our whole purpose in terms of what we were doing with Crafty Maltsters was about that exploration. And whilst you may compromise on yield, what do you gain in terms of flavor characteristics? That's really what we wanted to get to the crux of. And we started literally with a small bag of seed for each of the different varieties. And it took us 3-4 years to bulk up enough to have a batch to malt. Last harvests, we were about 25 tons across 3 different varieties. So a reasonable amount, but again, small by comparison to industry scale. So it is a commercial laureate variety that we predominantly malt, but we do have that heritage collection as well.
And did you source the seed from the James Hutton Institute? And I know they tried to, is there 8 heritage strains, or I think is it all heritage strains, or doing like landrace strains as well, that they've revived and sort of brought back to life?
Yeah. So I should have said these were landrace rather than heritage. It's just everybody kind of uses the word heritage. So, but we started with 7. We narrowed it down to 4. So 2 of those strains were bear barleys, which I would imagine a lot of your listeners will have heard of. Most people tend to think of bear as one variety, but actually there's a multitude of different strains covering the whole periphery and the islands of Scotland. So it was an Orkney bear and a Bernery Western Isles bear that we worked with, and also a landrace variety called Scotch Annet and another one called Scotch Common. And they were all from the James Hutton.
Yeah. I think more people, maybe we should explain for those maybe don't know the difference between heritage and landrace varieties, I guess. I'll leave that over to you.
Oh, thanks. The crucial difference with a landrace variety is that there's been no breeding involved in it. It is what it says on the tin. It's native to Scotland in our case, and has not been subject to any breeding. So when you start looking at varieties like Chevalier and Plumage Archer, which some of you may have heard of, they would more be classed as your heritage varieties because they have been bred for their characteristics.
So I think we see kind of more distilleries moving, especially newer distilleries who've got the scope for experimentation. They seem to be moving back towards your sort of landrace and your heritage varieties in pursuit of flavour, isn't it? So I think a lot of your laureates and things are specially cultivated for high yield, but maybe at the expense of flavour, as you were saying. So I mean, I think the guys watching, you've got Waterford with their sort of, it's the Hunter strain that they brought back to life, wasn't it? You've got Rassay, Dornoch and things. Do you think the consumers become more conscious of moving away from mass produced towards provenance and authenticity and traditional flavours?
Yeah, I mean, as you say, we supply Dornoch and we've worked with Rassay as well. And I think there definitely is a growing interest in the heritage or landrace varieties. Whether the consumer is fully aware of exactly what that means in the different varieties, I'm not sure we've done enough of a job in promoting that, or really kind of telling the story about what the benefits of those varieties might be, because there's an environmental benefit attached to them as well. The fact that they're native to Scotland means that they grow well here and they require fewer inputs from a nitrogen or a chemical perspective. And a very knowledgeable person said to me, we tend to think of these crops as being really difficult to grow and we've got to treat them with kid gloves, but they are sturdy plants. They were around for hundreds and hundreds of years and they're supposed to be here. So, we need to take off the blinkers and actually start looking at what they're capable of.
In terms of seeing like a crop of the two types of barley together, let's say you had like an old school kind of landrace one and maybe a more cultivated laureate type, for example, which I think is the most common malting barley out there. Would you see a difference with the two fields? I mean, in terms of height, in terms of the head, in terms of would people notice the difference between the two side by side?
Yeah, 100%. You would notice it at eye level, if you like. But what's most we had some drone footage taken, and actually even across the landrace varieties, there's noticeable difference in color, in density, and definitely in height. So the landrace varieties grow very tall, which can make things difficult because if we get a lot of rain, as we often do, they're prone to falling over, and that makes it difficult to combine. And in actual fact, the biggest issue with the landrace varieties is processing rather than growing. So when we come to harvest those grains, they're not suited to modern machinery. So it's very, very difficult for us to harvest them because they have really kind of hard awns, and the husks are also harder. And that's just a product of having to be hardy plants to cope with the Scottish climate. So they often can get stuck in the combine. They can get stuck during the malting process and bridge in some of the machines. So there's a few choice words when it comes to processing any of the land races, and it's another compromise. But it can be a difficult one.
I can imagine. This brought me on to a point that came into my head when I was chatting, and Ian's actually asked the same question. So I mean, I was going to ask, do you use direct drilling? But he's asked, do you practice low tilling or crop rotation? I'd imagine crop rotation might be a bit more difficult for you if you are a malting-based company, or do you use oats and things as well? I mean, is that something that you do?
Yeah, no, we absolutely have crop rotation because at the heart of everything that we do, it's about the health of the soil. If we don't keep that healthy, then we're never going to get the quality of product that we need. So along with barley, we also grow wheat, oats and beans. And beans are a nitrogen fixing crop, so they really help to keep the health of the soil. And we also, after we've harvested, we'll grow cover crops to make sure that there's continuous cover on the land, and that stops soil erosion and another. Sorry, I'm getting a bit complex now, but
no, you're talking to a farmer here. I'm completely for I'm anti-ploughing. I know it's necessary. Well, no, it's not really necessary. We've created it to be necessary, but I'm all like, save the worms. They're doing the ploughing for us.
Definitely.
So like direct drilling. I think direct drilling might be the future because we're losing so much topsoil from ploughing every year. But
It's for us. It's been we have practiced direct drilling, and it can be a difficult decision for a few reasons. One, the capital costs of a direct drill. You're talking maybe in the region of 50,000-60,000 pounds, maybe more now. And also, you do need to rely on a lot of chemicals for your weed control, because the whole act of ploughing is, putting that back down into the soil. So I think for us, it's always about what is best for your farm. And that is from a business, from an environmental, and from a people perspective. So yeah, it's a balance.
It is. With your cover crop, as Ian's saying, it also helps with wildlife and birds and pollinators. So that is a sort of self-healing system as well. And with your sort of your nitrogen-rich beans and things, I know it is a balance, isn't it? You can't tick all the boxes in one go. It's got to fit in gradually, doesn't it?
It does.
No, sorry, carry on.
I was just going to say that the biodiversity aspect of things is a really important one for us too. And a lot of people at the moment only really focus on the climate change questions and changes you should make. And I think equally as important is the biodiversity side. So whether that's field margins or cover crops or whatever it might be, it's a really crucial part of your farming enterprise.
I know, and it's so easy to blame all the farmers for everything and insist that they all make massive changes overnight. But it's more of a circular process. It's not all. Which brings on to the point that I think you write a blog for your website, and I think you mentioned about there being like a disconnect between the people and the land and what they consume, how it's made. Do you see that more or less, or do you think that's something that could change? I wondered if it was going to change during COVID when everybody became so dependent on the internal farming market. They were getting less of the produce brought in. But I kind of feel like maybe it went back too quickly to what it used to be before, when people just wanted cheap and the same and fast. What do you think as a current farmer?
I think there's definitely more of a move to support local and to support provenance and traceability. But the reality of it is it's really challenging for people, because we exist in a marketplace that's dominated by retailers. And as you said, by that quick sale mentality. Our lives are busy. We have to make quick choices. And I think as an industry, gradually over time, we have had to move to that commodity marketplace, because the supply chain infrastructure around us has dictated that that's what's necessary. And it would be lovely to think that we could all exist in a marketplace where we're selling our produce locally and directly, but the reality of that is it's not viable. And small scale can be difficult to make the numbers add up, difficult to find processing. I mean, not related to the malting barley industry, but on the meat side of things, there's very few local processing facilities that exist, very few local dairies. And from our point of view, very, very few small scale malting operations, which is why we chose to do what we're doing. But it isn't easy from an economy of scale point of view.
No, I can imagine. But it does give you that sort of variety of flavour, that sort of moving away from consistency. So, because a lot of farming has been about producing a consistent sort of everything. One thing fits every box. But now with your heritage grains and moving away from your sort of standardised yeasts as well, you're going to get more of that variety. Which actually brings me into Jacqueline's question. Hello, Jacqueline. Nice to see you. You have to come in and see me at the distillery sometime. She's asking, can you give an idea of the starch yield difference between modern commercial barley and landrace barley?
So from a grower's perspective, the yield can be half. So from a sort of tons per acre point of view, the laureate type barley, we would tend to find half or maybe slightly more than that from our landrace. So it's a big dip in the profit margin from that point of view. And then from a spirit yield point of view, we would see our distilling malt, laureate malt, would be about 420 predicted spirit yield. And from our landrace varieties, between 360 up to 380. I think part of the reason is everything that we do from a malting perspective, I think you would probably call craft, in that if we're going through the malting process and that modification, if it takes 6 days, if it takes 7 days, if it takes 8 days, we will wait until it is as modified as it possibly can be for the end customer. Whereas the larger maltsters don't really have that luxury, because they've got schedules, they've got hundreds of tons of grain coming through. They have to stick quite rigidly to that production schedule. And we've very purposely said, this is about quality. This is about producing the very best malt that we can. So we'll compromise on time and possibly profit, but we're pushing the yield. So I think for a landrace variety, that's about as much as you could possibly get because of the way we're malting it.
So do you have people coming to you requesting specific strains of malt that they want you to try? Or is that something that you would consider, or is it something that happens?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have people come to us to either malt their own, something that's been grown locally to them. So, for example, with Rassi, they had been growing a variety called Salome, and there isn't really anybody else that can malt that small batch. We've also been asked by others to malt beer that's been grown locally, and we've recently been asked about rye. So yeah, we definitely get people coming from that point of view, and I suppose because we had that passion to tell the story about barley, show the value, we're quite happy to facilitate allowing other people to do that. It doesn't have to just be about our own barley. It's about that bigger picture of just spelling out the differences and the qualities and characteristics. And on specific types of malt, we get a lot of requests for different types of malt. The reality is that we just can't accommodate it all because our system is small. So we concentrate on distilling malt, pale ale malt, and our landrace varieties.
So do you work like a commercial maltster? I know some of the guys that maybe have been on have done Mike's Highland Whisky Academy. They went in to see the big maltsters. So do you have sort of the similar equipment, but just on a smaller scale?
So ours is a drum malting system, which you wouldn't see in the large scale maltsters, because they tend to work with what's called Saladin boxes, so huge, big vessels. From a drum malting perspective, really the biggest size you would get is about 10 tons. So just to kind of explain that a bit better, during the malting process, the first stage is steeping, where you're flinging the barley into what is essentially a big vat of water, and getting the moisture content of it up. The next stage is germination. So that's when it transfers through into a big rotating drum. And it also stays in there for the final process, which is kilning.
Cool. And how are you drying it? Is it just like a air-fed, a gas kind of fan-fed sort of kiln, or is it like a fire-fed kiln?
No, it's a steam boiler that we use. And at the beginning of the journey, what was made very clear to us was from customers, that is consistency of product, quality of product, obviously. So we knew that we were going to have to invest quite heavily in equipment that had that level of automation and control. So it is quite a state-of-the-art system in terms of controlling that air and that moisture and humidity. So yeah, it's I think sometimes when people visit, they expect to see some sort of makeshift type farmer operation, and then they walk into the shed and they go, oh, right, now I get it.
Like a Wallace and Gromit sort of setup where, you know, one trigger sets off everything in a motion. I mean, or everything held together with blue string, because, you know, I've been in farming for 10 years, and if it can't be fixed with blue string, it's not worth fixing it.
That is absolutely true.
Or a bit of alkazine pipe.
Yes.
So is rye something you would consider as a rotational crop, or I mean, I don't know about growing rye. Is it certain? It's only suited to certain areas, maybe.
It is a good rotational crop, but it can leave behind volunteers in the next crop. So it can come. It is quite a, what's the right word? It's completely gone out of my head. But basically, you know, it'll pop up the following year in the next crop, which makes it a bit tricky. So it's not something that we've considered, because we're really happy with the beans that we grow. It does the right job for us. And we also have a livestock enterprise. So the beans, some of the beans are fed to the cattle along with barley, and also any of the dressings from the malting process. So nothing goes to waste. It all goes back to the cattle.
There's nothing prettier than a whole crop of peas or beans as well, though. It's so pretty.
Yes.
So Ian is asking, do you think we'll see a change in varieties grown in Scotland with different seasons compared to the weather we're accustomed to? Which is a good question, because I'd imagine that maybe your heritage and your landrace are, as you said, more resilient, more suited to sort of unusual, well, sort of volatile weather patterns, I guess, maybe.
Yeah, they're certainly not going to be for everybody because of that yield loss, and you wouldn't be growing them unless you had a very clear end market and you knew the price that you were going to be able to guarantee for them. I think what we will see is winter barley varieties that are capable and approved for malting purposes. There already is just now, but and the reason that research has happened is for exactly the reasons that you said. From a changing climate point of view, we need to make sure we've future-proofed. So that I think from a whole industry point of view will be the biggest change.
So, I mean, in terms of the weather changing, I know last year was really bad in terms of yield for malting barley. With that really hot weather we had, it kind of stunted growth quite a bit. I think it's had quite a knock-on effect for just distilleries accessing barley this year, and a massive increase in the price. And I think we're up to like £900 a tonne almost for malting barley at one point. So do you think maybe maltsters are going to have to change their parameters a little bit in terms of what they accept for malting, like nitrogen content and, you know, things like that, just so we don't end up running ourselves out of this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it's been really interesting for us to move from that farmer position into understanding fully the malting process and how easy it is for us in a smaller scale to increase those parameters. Obviously, you need quality barley to make quality malt, but there are definitely ways in which you can expand your parameters and still end up with a quality product. I think what's difficult for the larger maltsters is that they're working with so many different businesses across Scotland, so many different producers, and that widespread, you know, they have to standardize things. And I understand that. But if there is a bad year, you do see those parameters increase. I think from a price point of view, with the malting barley, the biggest impact was not necessarily just the reduction in yield, but it was the increase in input costs from the farming side. So we saw our fertilizer price rise from £280 to £1,000 a tonne.
Wow.
Which for us as a business was roughly around £60,000 of a difference to grow the crop. So there was no way that the end price could stay the same. Some people, you can lock into future prices, which we did, so we were a little bit shielded from it. But that fertilizer price is still sitting up here. yet the malting barley price has dropped and dropped and dropped. So I think the bigger issue is there is a point where that becomes completely unsustainable from a farming point of view. And if we want to future-proof the industry, then we need to work together to find where is that contractual price going to be set going forward. Because the heavy cost of machinery, I mean, we had a quote for a drill the other day, second hand, £63,000. You know, for a combine, you're talking well over 100,000, if not 200, probably more if you wanted a really fancy new one. It's really hard to see how that stacks up.
My ex-colleague who used to do these chats, so I don't know if he's watching tonight, is his dream is to be inside to drive a combine. I'm suddenly just very, very aware of how farm related this chat is and how much he really would love to be part of this. I'll have to ask you what kind of tractors you've got, though. My kids wouldn't let me away with it if I didn't ask you what kind of tractors you've got, because obviously you can tell a lot about a person depending on the breed of tractor.
Well, we are quite different in that we have a mix. So we have Massey Ferguson and John Deere and New Holland combines.
Oh, well, do you know what? That would suit all three of my kids. That's fine.
And I have said to Dan that he needs to do a Farmer Dan chat in the combine cab as part of our social media. So anybody's welcome to join him.
Be like grass men, but like, the crafty, I don't know, the crafty barley men or something. So do your sons, are they getting to drive some of the machinery yet, or are they at that stage where they want to be involved?
Yeah, so my eldest son, who's 14, has just done a tractor driving course. So he's been out rolling the fields, and I wouldn't say either of them are hugely enthusiastic, but they muck in a little bit.
That's good. Here's Mike.
Hi,
Hello.
You made it. You've got, wow, that's a jazzy tie. Nice.
I know. This is me in fancy mode.
Well, I'm not going to ask you what you've got in your glass tonight because you're quite clearly driving. So.
Evian's finest tonight.
Water. That's all right. I'm on a cup of tea, and Alison, you're rushing around doing rugby tonight, aren't you? So you're not on the whiskey either. But I think everybody at home's got some
I'm not playing rugby.
No,
I'm really
on the rugby pickup.
playing rugby.
Just going to disconnect and head straight into the scrum.
Yeah.
I was just saying that we've been geeking out over farming, and of course Russell has missed this chat tonight. Yeah. This is like farming overloads. We're mentioning combines and tractors and all sorts of stuff.
Oh, he would have loved it. I think this is probably why he asked you on, Alison, was to geek out on the combines.
Well, I can definitely sort that out. Yeah, definitely.
Oh no! Don't get him involved now. He's gone.
He left.
Yeah.
I mean, I think what we noticed more than anything else when we started this was that people know very little about barley and malt, and that's not their fault. It's, as an industry, it's our fault because we haven't told the story about it. We haven't kind of raised its profile in any way. So I think for us, that's a huge part of what we do.
I think we're only just kind of discussing barley as one of the vital ingredients. It's always just seen as a means to end. And there's not many distilleries where people can see the actual malting process happening. So a lot of people just don't really consider the barley in the whole process, do they?
No, I mean, I think when you consider the richness of the story that sits behind it, you know, the farming families, generational families from all parts of Scotland, that there's just such a richness to that tapestry, to that story, to that product, that it seems a terrible shame to have it being invisible.
It does.
Yeah. And I suppose, you know, and one thing that is great with Glengarry, you guys have probably covered all this.
No, we haven't talked about Glengarry, I promise. I haven't even mentioned Glengarry.
Right,
I genuinely haven't either.
And I think when we talk about any visitor centre, they talk about how it used to be done. And then they just kind of signed off with, but now it's all done in a Maltons and we buy it in. and move on. So nobody ever sees or hears about what is actually done. And I think it's interesting you're saying about the varieties of barley. It's probably one, Kat, you probably know this as well, and most visitor centres will have that kind of bingo tick list of questions you expect, and probably inevitably somebody will say, and what kind of barley is it that you use? Without really knowing what difference it makes.
I know what to do with that information once they've got it. It is just a tick box.
Yeah.
And then you actually get down to nitty gritty of it, because if people ask me that question, I will actually go to town and tell them about barley, but you just kind of see the sort of, I wish I hadn't asked. Look, come across their face.
Yeah, and I think that's the really difficult part of it, because when you're in it, it's easy to explain things in a scientific, in a production kind of manner, and we sometimes can, and I probably have in this conversation been drawn into describing that, but the most important thing that I just mentioned is around the richness of that story, and really understanding that whilst you were saying earlier about the traditional way that it was done, whether that was floor malting and people using scythes and things like that, obviously and clearly that's very different to what's done now. But what still exists is that family, community, business, looking after the land aspects of things. That hasn't changed. We're not massive industrial scale farming businesses. We're family farming businesses. Sure. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, so the fact you can have that sort of authenticity and provenance and just say, well, in this glass, it came from that field over there. I mean, there's not that many places that can do that. So yeah, you must be very proud every time that you know that one of your fields literally has gone into a product. Are you allowed to name drop some of the products that you work with through your business?
Yeah, of course. So we've worked a lot with Dornoch Distillery. They've taken.
I know Ewan is a big fan of heritage and landrace and barley. We got into quite a conversation about it when he was on last time.
Yeah, so they've taken all 4 of the landrace varieties that we've grown, and they were, I think, they were our first distilling customer of the landrace varieties. We have also worked with Ardnamurchan, with Rassay, with Lindor's distillery. We have shipped to a distillery in Sweden right at the very beginning of launching Crafty Maltsters, and I think are about to start working with a new distillery down in Moffat.
Oh wow! I didn't know there was. I was going to say it's not the new Keith distillery, but that's Perth. What is that? Perth? That was.
That's Perth. Yeah.
Okay, I wonder where the Moffat distillery is. Because I think. Sorry, Karen.
They're called Dark Sky Spirits.
Oh.
So they're.
Is that?
I think. No, go ahead.
Just giving away any secret.
Why not? No, it's fine. Nobody watches. No. I'm sure it'll be fine. What were you going to say, Mike? Sorry.
I was thinking Dark Star, but there's Dark Sky. Is that the guys who they've got a gin out just now?
Is it? I don't know if it's a gin or if it's a kind of fruit forage.
In Galloway, the Sky Garden. They're Dark Sky Spirits, aren't they? No.
Oh, now I don't know.
Yeah, the
Maybe
one
not.
The one they've got in the shop with the pretty bottle with the.
Yeah.
Has it got a wax top on it?
No.
White wax, yeah. Yeah, white wax, isn't it?
Oh no, maybe it does, yeah. I don't know. But
maybe. So there's a distillery in Moffat you're working with. That's good.
Yes. And I hope I haven't forgotten to mention anybody. I feel like I have. But we work with quite a lot of brewers as well. And at first it was brewing customers that came to us. I think the distilleries were keen to wait and see what are they saying about the quality, about the consistency, because obviously for them, there's a longevity. So yeah, they thought they'd let the brewers test the water first. And then now it's more on the distilling end that our customer base sits.
I guess distillers, would they go through more malt creating whiskey than brewers do making beer?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it depends on the scale.
On the scale, yeah.
When we're working with distillers, it tends to be on special projects that they're doing. So, like Savard and American, or Rassi or Lindors. With Lindors, we supplied them with 10 tons of Scotch annet. So that was to do, a production run for a special release. So that tends to be, because there's no way that we could supply. I mean, I think they'll probably be about 500 tons a year. So that's way beyond our production capacity.
Okay. That's interesting. I was watching last week. You were involved with the Whisky Ambassador advanced course. I did that last year, and I was quite gutted when they announced that you guys would be involved this year, because they didn't have you guys last year. So how was that for you? How did you find that experience?
It was really good, really interesting. It was marginally fraught because they were really quite late and I had to go and pick up my kids. So I was trying to canter through everything. But no, really great bunch of people and lovely to see so many from different parts of the world and how enthusiastic they were. So yeah, it was a pleasure to host. And we have a lot of visitors. We're not a visitor attraction as such, but we do kind of welcome people in and show them around, and a big part of telling the story. So yeah, it's always nice to see people. And I think I do a lot of different things. So I'm out and about and at meetings and things a lot. My husband's less so. So for him, it's really nice to have that interaction and that affirmation, I suppose, that what you're doing from a growing and a malting perspective is making a difference to people, and people are enthusiastic, and it's really important to kind of step back a bit and listen to that, because it makes what you're doing worth it.
Yeah, I can imagine. People do get, I mean, the people who are geeky about it are very geeky about it, aren't they?
Yeah, that's okay. We can do
the fact you've been included in these sort of like training program things, I've just forgotten the name of it, what is it called, ambassador programs, shows that maybe people are viewing the malting side of things and the barley side of things more as an important thing to talk about now as well. So it's like a full circle process. You can't talk about the end product without mentioning the barley. So it's good that it's included in these sort of courses.
No, and I mean, I think from where we started in 2019 to now, we have seen a huge change in the way that people talk about malt and the importance of the barley. And I'd like to think that in a small way, we've been part of changing that mindset. We've been lucky enough to have been featured in a lot of different kind of press, podcasts, various different things, none of which we've had to pay for, which has been really nice. So yeah, it's a core function of what we do. That it's not education, I don't want to call it that. It's just about sharing the story.
Yeah. We've got a question from Ben. How much of the barley is from Scotland? So maybe he means malted barley in general, not yours, because yours is all from Scotland. But do you know that as a fact about how much of the malted barley is from Scotland?
So I don't know what the percentages were last. I should probably say that all of the malt that we produce is grown on our farm, just in case that was the question. But all of the malting barley that's grown in Scotland tends to exclusively go in for distilling because of the quality, of course. And so much of brewers' malt tends to be coming from down south because ours is up by the distilling industry. In terms of the percentage, we're absolutely not self-sufficient, but I don't know what the percentage is that will be pulled in from down south. And there is a lot of malting capacity up here, but not enough to fulfill demand. So a proportion is almost certainly grown and also malted in England. And I really hope not a lot is coming in from overseas, because it doesn't need to, but it might.
I did hear somewhere, and I think it was when we did a tour of Chris. I might be wrong on that, but I heard it's about 60% of the malt used in Scotch production comes from Aberdeenshire.
Do you know where you heard that fact from, Michael Stewart?
Where did I hear that? Was it you?
Me.
Was it?
Me.
It was you. Oh, so it's probably not true then. So it's probably not true.
I'll have you know that was an article I read from the Aberdeenshire Council's agricultural PDF that they put out every single year, but maybe a couple of years out of date. But that's where I got that from, and that was a long read to get to that fact.
Yeah, I'm going to pass as well. I don't know.
Right.
We'll call it about 60%. But then Aberdeenshire is a massive agricultural sector. I
mean, traditionally it wasn't barley growing country, it was livestock country. So I think that's, you were mentioning earlier that there was an issue with yield for a lot of people last year. The climate for you guys up in Aberdeenshire can be significantly different from what we experienced in a farming sense. So we didn't see the same issue with yield or with the kind of wet weather, and I think that's probably the second year that it's been just slightly more extreme in Aberdeenshire and further north.
Yeah, usually we've got quite a low rainfall, like about 30 inches averaging, but usually it's quite consistent. It's quite balanced over the year, but that couple of weeks in the summertime was crazy, really, really hot, really unusual as well. Northeast people are not cut out for that.
We're not used to it either. It's just, we're never happy with it either. If it's really hot, we'll moan. If it's really cold, we'll moan. And if it's in the middle, we'll wish it was one of the other two. I think that's a Scottish thing, isn't it? One of my favourite things, I think we were speaking about it the other day, is my favourite saying from the farmers is, aye, but we'll pay for it.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, no matter how good something is, we'll pay for it.
That's true. Yeah.
I know. We've got so many expressions for the weather as well. Oh, dinna cast a clout until May's out. And
I was about to say that one because I was trying to remember what it was in my head, but yeah, my husband said that only the other day.
And there was two ladies talking about it in the shop the other day, and one of the ladies said that actually it's not the month of May, it's the May flower, which would be the hawthorn. So dinna cast a clout until the May flower is out. So technically that's now. Well, I don't know how true that is. But I never thought about it that way. I'd never thought about it that way.
No, I always thought it was the month of May, is out.
Yeah, I assume so as well. But who knows? It's open to interpretation.
I shall spread the word on that one.
Let it be known. Everyone write it down.
Just for the guys at home, go fire through your weather-related sayings. That could be fun.
Yes, everybody must have their own one that their granny used to say. I bet there is. More importantly, have you ever done a barley angel? Just in case you have, because sometimes people do that when they see barley on the floor. I'm not saying I've done that, but I know that sometimes people do that.
I haven't either, because I think I'd get around. What are you doing flattening that crop?
No, not the actual stand, not the standing barley. The barley grains.
Okay, now I get it.
I would never flatten a crop. I get the absolute rage when I see people walking in barley parks but not in the tram lines. I'm like, those tram lines, that's really easy. Just stick to the tram lines. There's no need to be just plighted and straight through the middle. But no, lying in the floor of malted barley kind of works a bit like sand. I'm led to believe.
I'll try that.
Not saying that anybody's done that.
I find it really difficult to look at the comments as well as speaking, and I hope I haven't missed any questions.
No, we're keeping up with them. I mean, Chris has asked, what's Mike eating?
I mean, cheese.
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 Do you pack a bag of small cubes of cheese?
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe you'd like made yourself like a travel snack of just small kind of cubes of cheese.
No, we made a hamper for the guests. I've been out on a tour today. Down to Glen Eagles and then up to Macallan and Glenfarclas, Ballindalla Castle, back to Glen Eagles. So I'm sitting in the Glen Eagles Hotel car park. Not sure if you could see the hotel's over there somewhere.
Sorry. I can, but my son has also just joined us.
That's all right. More the merrier.
Well, I know, but he's not fully clothed. So, sorry.
We'll have to put one of those in. We'll pixelate it later. It's fine.
Yeah. Okay. Right. It was waist up. We're all right.
Okay, good. Bye. Sorry.
We've had a couple of weather-related expressions through. Blana Huli. That is a good one. It's Blana Huli.
Blan a holole in Gaelic, in Doric. A holole. I've never. Oh, he corrected himself. Huli. Yeah.
I'd love to know that why his autocorrect changed it to holole. I don't know what a holole is, but I think we should find out.
Just for the guy, I'll just pop it on there in case people wonder what the hell we're talking about. Somebody has commented on YouTube, so we have. So these comments come up, and if somebody's watching on YouTube, they only appear for the YouTube viewers. If somebody comments on Facebook, it only appears for the Facebook viewers.
Ah.
So if you put them on screen, I think everyone sees it.
Excellent. Now I understand.
Dominic got turned away at the gate of Macallan. Yes, we got in, but we pre-booked the guys in. So you can't just turn up at Macallan to look around. And they don't call it a shop anymore; it's a boutique.
Ooh.
You get in trouble for calling it a shop. But you have to book it.
Eyeballs roll into the back of my head there. That's ridiculous. Yeah.
But everyone does it different.
They do.
As I was reminded today.
So they don't still stick to Golden Promise, though, do they? The Macallan. It was Golden Promise they used to use, wasn't it? Their barley. But I'd imagine they're a bit more commercial now, buying in all sorts of different varieties. Would that be classed as a heritage strain, the Golden Promise? Is that a 1960s style?
Yeah, I mean, people do talk about it as heritage, but there's no real criteria, so it's acceptable to kind of go back only that far and talk about heritage. But yeah, 60s. I mean, it was being used up until the 80s, quite widespread. So if that's heritage, then I feel really old.
Did they have a monopoly on that, though? Did they not have their own strain of malt that only they could use? Was that the Golden Promise one? Or was that, am I making up facts in my head? I'm sure they had a sort of hold over one type of malt that only they could use.
Yeah, so Golden Promise is owned by Simpsons, I believe, Simpsons Malt. There's definitely an increasing desire for people to own different strains and to own the seed rights to them. There is a responsibility that goes along with that, in that you have to maintain the variety in its purest form. But yeah, there's definitely growing interests in that. People like Arbiki are looking at particular strains that they can use, and obviously they have the opportunity to then take that all the way from farming through into their distilling process.
I love Arbiki Distillery. They had a whole crop of peas outside the front of the distillery when I was over. It was lovely. But it was really interesting, the things they were doing over there as well.
Crop of peas?
A whole crop of peas.
Make pea gin.
They do make pea gin. And then I think they use it as a whole crop. Mike, you look like you're a little bit lost there.
I love peas, like garden peas in pods.
Yeah, peas are a really good legume, so they're a soil corrector. So they put nitrogen back into the soil, but they can use that also. I think they named that because they have a couple of gins, and one of them's named after their master distiller. I can't remember her name. Kirsty. Kirsty.
Sure.
So I think she chose, because I think botany and things is one of her degrees that she did, and I think maybe the pigeon is her creation. Correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not sure.
Her speciality is legumes.
Legumes.
So yeah, she's been involved in obviously the pea project, but also I'm pretty sure it was her that was involved in a project that was malting beans, spring beans. And they went on to be distilled by a brewer in Edinburgh.
Wow, that'd be cool, wouldn't it? That's
you can
amazing.
pretty much malt anything, really. What it tastes like might be a different matter.
Yeah.
I suppose anything with sugar content, I guess you can. Well, it doesn't need to have sugar content. Can you just malt anything? Is it just?
I don't know what the sugar content of a legume is, but yeah, I mean, we would love to malt because we grow oats. We would love to malt some of our oats, and yeah, just see how we get on. But we just haven't found a space to do it yet. But it's on the cards.
Yeah. The guys on YouTube are having a little conversation about Macallan. So Chris was told last week they use momentum barley.
Okay.
Is that, and only they can use it.
Is that what I'm thinking of then? Maybe.
Dave is asking if you could still pop into the shop. No, Azine has just commented, not without calling to book first. You can't just pop into to walk around. I spoke to the guy at the front desk, the front gate this morning. I said, so how many people have you turned away today? You turned away 22 cars in the first 2 hours.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Jeez. I mean, I guess why though it is like a gated, they must just be inundated with people. It just must be the easiest way of just keeping control of just people, I guess.
Yeah. I'm loving Dominic.
That's so romantic. My wife sits among the cabbages and peas. It's almost like a Wendell Berry poem. How lovely.
Sounds like a Peter Rabbit poem, maybe.
It is. It's not because you've locked it out though, because you've got too many horses in it. I hope not. I hope it's a choice. Also, hello to Chris. I met Chris for the first time the other day. He came to the distillery. So Chris. Nice to see you again. Did we get all the questions? I think we did. I think we just got into a chat about the Macallan now.
Yeah, and peas.
And peas.
Alison, are you, sorry if you've answered this before, are you a whiskey drinker or do you prefer beer or?
So I am a whiskey drinker, but I would say proportionately there's definitely more wine drunk than whiskey, which is probably a good thing given the percentage differences between the two. But yeah, I do like a whiskey now and then.
Okay. What kind of whiskey would you go for? Do you prefer something that you've created or?
We haven't actually really tasted anything that we've created because the first distilling malt was about 2 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So nothing has been released yet. We've tasted the new make spirit, but not the final product. So yes, I think obviously that will be my favorite, and particularly with the landrace varieties, because that will be the first time that they've been distilled with since the 1800s in the case of 2 of the varieties that we grow. So there's something pretty special about that, and I would imagine that'll influence the taste buds just thinking. So yeah, that'll be a really special moment for us when we get to taste that. I actually quite like peaty malts. We don't sell peated malt, so I'm not going to get to taste one of those. And we have been, I'm building up a little bit of a whiskey collection just now, and it's a whiskey collection probably quite different to other people's in that I haven't paid for any of them.
That's the best kinds.
Well, we've been lucky enough to have been gifted some really special bottles of whiskey, and I haven't tasted any of them because I don't want to open them. So we've got one from Glenturret, a manager's dram, which was one of 300, I think, and I got one of the rye, Bruichladdich rye edition.
I need to try that.
And last week I was sent in the post a bottle from La Alison distillery in Patagonia, which is the first single malt distillery in Argentina. And they were across visiting us a few years ago, and then their son came and stayed with us for a month. So they, as a gift, sent me a bottle of their whiskey.
Really?
So it's an eclectic collection that we're amassing.
That's nice.
So they came over for research. They kind of learned from you guys and then went off and made their own malt off the back of it. Is that the plan there?
No, they were already. So they're really quite incredible couple. They came from a kind of farming background and basically built the distillery, including doing a lot of the fabrication work themselves. They designed and built a small malting plant. So it's their own barley going through the malting plant, and their son is now involved in a project that they are launching with a craft maltster in America to build another distillery in Montana. So
wow.
He was doing an internship at Bruichladdich and also came to us to see what we were up to and learn a bit and just generally get the crack.
Have you been out to Bruichladdich to see what they're doing out there? They're quite into their barley and them.
I haven't. I've been chatting to them recently, but no, I haven't been out to visit. So that's a must. It can be quite difficult for us to get away because we don't employ anybody else in the maltings. It's just myself and Dan, and it's a 750 acre farm that we have, and we only have one other employee. So it's quite labor intensive.
You have to get the son to get his shirt on and get in the fields.
I'd say that would be a good idea. We do take holidays though, because otherwise you couldn't possibly stay sane. So
usually as soon as you make plans, something ends up on its back with its legs in the air, or something breaks down, or something needs fixed, or just it's farming, isn't it? Let's go out. Oh no, why is that cat? It's dead. No, we can't go out. It's just usually the way of things.
It's a way of life. I think somebody was asking there about Nicknean.
Yeah, but the organic barley.
So there definitely is a lot of anecdotal thought that organic produces a different flavor profile, and that makes sense because it's a different growing regime, a different management regime. We at one stage were actually certified organic for the malting plant because we're not organic farmers. It's a long process to achieve that status, but we were certified organic for the malt house, and we processed some barley that was grown in Falkland Estate, which is just one of our neighbours across the way, and they are organic, processed it in our maltings and sent it on to Lindores because that replicated the journey of the first spirit that was distilled by the monks in 1494, because the barley was bought from Falkland Palace. That was a really nice story to be part of, but I have not yet tasted that either. So I cannot say for definite whether I think it's different, but my gut would tell me that it will be.
I think we had another question further up that I meant to get to. There was another question somewhere. Who was it? We were talking about it a second ago as well.
Malting in the future with peat restrictions, will there be new methods to try and extract peat aromas? Is it that one?
Yes, that's the one.
There we go. So what about malting in the future?
I think it definitely is on the radar. It definitely has to be a consideration, not least because from a carbon sequestration point of view, peatland is the most beneficial. And if Scottish Government want to achieve that, they targets that they want to achieve from a climate reduction point of view, there'll be heavy incentives to use that type of land and keep it natural and unharvested. So, yeah, I think that there would be
I was reading some of the proposed restrictions coming out, and one of them is that you can't buy peat now. If you're using it, it has to be on private land. That's one of the proposals. So there'll be no trading with peat. So if that comes into play, that's a massive impact. I mean, some of the distilleries will probably be able to buy land and just say, well, we'll buy it and then we'll use it ourselves. But there'll be a lot who won't be able to do that, I guess.
No, it's... Sorry.
I think a lot of distilleries are looking into peatland restoration as well. So fixing what they've removed. I think the main problem is the holes that's left behind and the carbon leaching. As soon as you've repaired that surface, you're returning the sequestration of carbon. It's a really difficult word to say. So I'm not sure if it's so much as the using up the peat as fixing the peat hags and stopping the carbon leaching out of it. I think as soon as you've kind of covered that hole, it could start self-healing, like the water will turn, the moisture will turn. So I think more distillers are looking into that as well to offset what they're using, because we still do account for like less than 1% of total peat usage, I think. But yeah, maybe that would be looked at.
I mean, my kind of experience from a farming perspective is that climate change rightly is so high up the agenda that I think if people pull out what they feel is the silver bullet to solve all of our problems, then we've become fixated on that without actually a rational, balanced, scientific basis for which to make decisions about what is the right and wrong thing to do. And I think we're definitely missing that real balanced judgment sometimes.
Yeah. So I think McMyra over in Sweden, they burn juniper bushes to smoke their whiskey as an alternative to peat.
We can't do that in Scotland. It's the third most endangered tree in mainland.
Yeah.
We definitely can't do that. It's on the critically endangered list.
Yeah. I'm not suggesting that we go back down the last of the juniper, but
we can burn citrus fruits to get rid of that. Or rhododendrons, other toxic. I don't know. Burn fwyn bushes. We'll do that. Yeah, there must be an alternative. There must be an alternative there.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, it does give a very different smokiness. Though. It's a much more woody, sweet smoke than that earthy or medicinal kind of style, depending on where the peat comes from. It is very different. But Alison, did you say that?
Sorry, I was going to say I think that's how it ended up rare, wasn't it? Because the illicit distillers used to cut up the juniper for their stills. Carry on.
I was going to ask, Alison, did I hear you right when you said that you don't do any peat malting at Crafty? No, I thought.
No, we can't because it would taint the drum. So we just, we would have to have a completely separate drum to do that. And we don't have a few 100,000 to buy another drum at this stage. So no peat for us.
Not yet.
Ian's just said that he tried Balvenie from smoked red heather. I didn't know they were doing that. But they said it was a nightmare to work with.
Can imagine.
So that's quite cool. Yeah. I mean, they still do the heather burning, so you could just stand outside with your bottle of whiskey and see if you can get the same effect. Just stand outside your glass while they're burning the heather.
Smell it. There we go. Yeah. Not sure if that would have the same effect. Oh, no, it wouldn't.
It's bringing a tear to my eye. No, it's just the smoke. But then it shows they are trialing different things. There are alternatives. I didn't know that. That's quite cool. I'm going to Google that after this.
Yeah, I think we've loads of alternatives in different aspects of brewing, distilling, malting. It's just that we have become a bit closed-minded in some areas, and it's just about thinking differently. I mean, when we first started doing what we were doing, people were, the barley, it doesn't make any difference. It's just, bog standard product.
Yeah.
And, we definitely didn't want to be an evangelical about, oh, yes, it is, because we didn't know, but we definitely wanted to find out.
And I suppose, do you find that kind of naysaying comes from certain parts of the distillery, or was it, so I know that the guys who really are behind it tend to be the smaller independent, but the guys who maybe poo-pooed it and originally were kind of the bigger conglomerates, maybe looking for yield.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, I mentioned earlier that from our point of view, it wasn't about being in competition with anybody. It was about doing things differently. And what we saw was a little bit of defensiveness in the first instance, a little bit of try and disrupt things. And, we've always been very careful in how we've positioned things. We're not suggesting that what we do is better than what anybody else is doing. We're just saying that it's different, and that we, being small scale, have an ability to explore and differentiate in ways that you can't when you're a big business. That's just life. And, I think there's nothing, well, I think once we explained that, people became less defensive about it. And also once we were more proven in that, it was clear that our malt was of a high quality and that the spirit yield it was giving was probably exceeding a lot of people's expectations, because people could be quick to say, you just won't get the quality or consistency. You just won't. And you kind of think in your mind, well, common sense would suggest that it's coming from the same farm. It has the same nitrogen profile, the same, grain makeup. It's going to be more consistent. But it's just not the way that the industry in its kind of entirety operates. But that's fine. There's a place for everything.
Yeah, there's definitely a change to the industry, though, because we were speaking to Johnny and Angus the other day, and they're deliberately making a new distillery that moves away from this uniform, mass-produced sort of consistent same product. So it's definitely been the case for a long time, but there's definitely a movement against it as well. So neither way is right or wrong. It's just there's two different ways of looking at it.
Yeah, and I think definitely consumers are moving in that direction. We talked about this at the beginning. There's definitely a limitation from a cost of living point of view, but I think people choose carefully how they spend their money, and they want to feel that affinity with their locality, or knowing that what they're consuming has been done ethically, or there's something different about it, and it gives them a good feeling to buy it. Yeah. And that's, well, yeah, it's a better way to shop, isn't it? Feel good about what you're buying.
Yeah. I know. You've got to think twice about buying things nowadays as well, just making sure it's something really good that you're buying. Dominic saying he went down to Edinburgh on Saturday to the Ardbeg event. So he did get down, Dominic, and they were using liquid smoke on canopies. So I didn't have my glasses on there. I didn't know what that said. Canopies. Brackets finger food, thank you. It worked pretty well. So yeah, maybe that could be an option. And he tried the Ardbeg, the bizarre barbecue. Very good. Hope you enjoyed it. There is plenty of gorse. It does, and it does smell like coconuts. It's lovely, actually.
It disappears though, the coconut smell, because I had a notion at one point to try and pick lots of gorse leaves and freeze them and do something in a brewing sense with them. And I spent a lot of time picking those gorse leaves because those plants are quite spiky.
They're spiky.
And it didn't work.
I don't know, because they make gorse wine, don't they? But I've never tried it. So I don't know if it tastes like coconuts or not, or whether it's just a floral kind of flavor.
I think it probably didn't work because of my lack of knowledge, rather than like it just doesn't work.
Did they ever use Yeah, and they made gorse tonic, didn't they?
Oh, did they?
Who was it? I can't remember what. Who made the neat tonic? Who was that?
Oh, Paul McGregor.
Yeah, I think they did a gorse. I'm sure they did a gorse one as well.
All right.
Did they ever use peated malt in beer? I don't know about beer, but did they ever use peated malt in beer?
Not that I'm aware of. No, well, no, I've seen a peat smoked something actually. And they'll barrel age stuff, but
Yeah.
I've not. Yeah, I think it was brewery that's now closed that I saw a peat smoked. So that must have had a little bit of, but just a little bit probably.
Yeah. What's your favourite strain of barley to work with? Is there one that stands out that you just love how it works, how it takes, and what product it gives?
The answer to that question is different depending on whether you're thinking about it from a farming, malting, pain in the ass kind of way, or whether you're thinking about the end product and what it tastes like. So the bear barley, which goes back to Viking times.
Yeah.
When you crunch the malt at the end of the process, it's just got this sweetness to it that is like nothing else. Even though we will have a distilling malt is typically kilned at a lower temperature, so you're almost kind of getting rid of that sweetness and it's got a blandness to it. So we kiln it to a lower temperature, but it still keeps that sweetness and it's just totally different. But from a farming and a malting point of view, wow, it's hard. Definitely the commercial varieties for ease of working with, and that I suppose just makes sense. But
commercial.
But the Scotch Annet and the Scotch Common also have quite distinctive flavour attributes too, and they're a little bit easier to work with.
Awesome.
That's cool.
Are you involved in any way in the research part of new varieties? I know that they're kind of always looking at new varieties and producing disease resistant, weather resistant. Do you guys get involved in that? Are you asked to trial anything or?
Yeah, so I was saying at the beginning of the call that research and development was a big focus for us, because if we were going to prove that the barley made a substantial difference from a brewing and distilling point of view, then a lot of it had to be around varietal choice. So we very quickly established a relationship with James Hutton Institute. So we've done quite a lot of trialing. We have a close relationship with them, looking at different, opportunities for the future. We've also worked with the Rowett Institute, which is up in Aberdeenshire. So looking at the nutritional nutritional components of the different varieties, because we do supply a little bit to the baking industry, and we're involved in, hopefully going to be involved in a project if it gets approved with the Rowett around substitute flours with higher nutritional value for availability to kind of disadvantaged communities or people on low incomes. So yeah, a lot of different.
Cool. So you have do you set aside sort of trial fields for these institutes just so they can come and monitor it and see how it's going and see what they need to do to grow it, I guess?
Yeah, we did a lot of trial work at the beginning, and actually the James Hutton Institute came in and sowed and harvested that for us, because it had to be done with a plot combine, because ours was too big. They were kind of 7-meter strips or probably less. So we couldn't do it. So they very kindly came in and did it for us. Same the following year. We haven't done any trial work for the last couple of years because it's quite difficult from a labor perspective. You've got to combine, you've got to separate, you've got to, it's quite intense. But what we are trialing is different inputs. So like a product called Poly 4, which is an organic substitute for P and K, like what the crop needs to grow. So we don't just focus on, I suppose, what you might call the sexy things. We also kind of think about what can we do differently that people might not be so interested to hear, but it's important for the quality of what we're doing.
Yeah, that's interesting. Are we falling behind questions, or is this just general chat that's going on? Maybe
there's a few comments come up about malting rye. I think rye is malted, or is rye malted, or did he use the impact with a bit of barley in there to kickstart that germination?
I think that's you always have to put malt barley in, don't you? With it.
So rye can be used unmalted.
Yeah.
But yes, we have had requests to malt rye, because I think when it's unmalted, it's very difficult to process and obviously isn't giving much of a yield. So yeah, better. Is it going to be better when it's malted? That's the discussion that we're involved in. I mean, our malting equipment is capable of malting rye, or we've been asked to malt millet. There was a brewer in Edinburgh that was doing gluten-free. So we were looking at malting some millet for him, but it was pretty impossible in the UK because all of the millet grown here goes for bird seed. So the chemicals that are used on it make it not fit for human consumption. So we were going to have to buy it in from France and malt it, which doesn't make a great deal of sense.
Yeah. Damn birds.
Yep.
I wonder what chemical they put on it for birds.
I got excited with that.
It might happen. You need to get a field, Mike, and grow millet.
Birds can eat anything. Why do they have to steal all the milk?
I don't know.
Not enough worms for them.
There's not enough worms for them, maybe. We'll have to, I don't know.
They can eat the juniper berries. There's plenty of that.
I don't know if there is, actually. Chips. Teenagers' chips. Surely it's enough teenagers' chips out there to keep the birds going.
I'm not sure if seagulls kind of died out on millet, to be honest.
I don't think it would be filling enough.
No. Anyway, we're digressing again. Ed Friday's kind of gone back onto the peated debate, saying a lot of distillers only do peated stuff immediately before a deep clean. Could they not do this afterwards and have a gradually decreasing influence of peat? I don't know. I suppose there's reasons that guys like this have been doing it for 200 years. Is there'll be a system that works and change. I suppose that's maybe it. Maybe they need to change the system, and that's where the problem is. Yeah,
I mean, from our point of view, we couldn't take a risk because of the airflow going all the way through the system. It's hugely expensive kit. We couldn't take a risk that it may or may not taint it. So because we are kind of operate at capacity anyway, and we could probably, we could go well beyond what we actually produce. We don't need to do it. So
do you get requests for peat? If people come to you and say, "Can you do peat?" and you just have to say no?
That the millet was probably the most left field request. Although we have had a request to, it wasn't exactly malt wheat, it was wash wheat that had been tainted by a dryer. Like when it was being dried off the farm, you can get a petrol or diesel. So the person had read that if you put it in a washing machine, it'll remove the taint. And obviously the quantity which they had was bigger than a washing machine scale. So he thought, I know who has a washing machine style system, the Crafty Maltsters will help me. And we helped.
I love the idea
Successfully.
Yeah.
I love the idea of all these grains tasting like bold or like, surf.
Yeah. Taste the notes of lemon fresh. I just had an idea of him like scooping it into his own washing machine, like one bucket at a time, and putting it on the side.
I know.
I mean, like, my washing machine isn't even like a penny being stuck in there, let alone a pile of blooming oats or barley.
I think the suggestion was that you put it in a Hessian sack.
Yeah, you put it in a gauze or something.
That does make more sense.
I mean, it
than
was
just
like
heaving it straight in.
Well, it was 8 tons, so
Wow.
definitely wasn't going in the washing machine.
Yeah, that would put the electric bill up a wee bit.
I think so. I think that's kind of probably the most bizarre request that we've had. So, yeah.
But you did it and it worked, so all good. He's not come back with more then.
No, I think there was firm words had on making sure it wasn't tainted in the future. Because it was a very expensive wheat by the end of it.
I can imagine. My God. And was that for distilling or was that for brewing?
No, it was for baking.
For baking. Ah, right.
Okay.
Yep.
You definitely don't want diesel notes in your Victoria sponge, do you?
No. Well, we do.
You get away with it in our bag, maybe, but not in a Victoria sandwich.
We do work with a few artisan bread makers because they will put a bit of malt flour in. So it's quite a nice thing to be part of.
Sorry, I've just read Dominic's comment. He's going to do an experiment right now with non-peated whiskey and smoky bacon crisps. I don't think it's going to save the planet, Dominic, but do you know what? Good for you for taking one for the team and giving it a go.
One step at a time. If everyone drank non-peated whiskey and ate smoky bacon crisps, it could work.
Yeah.
Let us know how you get on with it.
I don't want to disappoint you, Dominic, and tell you that pig feed is made up of soy, which is one of the crops that they're cutting down a lot of forests to plant. But do you know what? You get on with that bacon crisps and never you mind.
Oh dear.
It enhances the crisp.
Yeah.
Hope you're not dunking the crisps in the whiskey, though. That's a step too far.
The best thing you can do for crisps is have whiskey with them. Yeah. Awesome. So Alison, you might have answered this, and if you have, skip over it. Tell me to shush. So, what does a day look like for you guys from kind of going in the morning
after feeding your little lamb and your little calf?
So I'm not going to claim to do a great deal of the malting. My husband is very much the master maltster, and it's his kind of expertise on that front that's given us the reputation for the quality malt that we have. For him, I think if I asked him what an average day was, he would list me 100 different things. But yeah, we have livestock, and we have obviously a large arable farm. So from a malting perspective, it depends what stage of the process that we're at. So if it's the beginning, Dan will have to dress, clean the grain, make sure it's underwater when it's steeping. A lot of what he's doing is about checking moisture of the grain to make sure that it's at the right level during the malting process. Then there's a big sensory aspect to it, and I think when we first went on this journey, there was a master maltster, if you like, that came down and took us through the process and stayed with us for a few weeks. And what he taught us was invaluable. But what we also realized was that this was different, and that this was about learning how to malt in the way that we wanted to do it, not in a large scale way. So Dan has really learned that craft, and the sensory aspect of it, is the touching, is the feeling, is the smelling of the malt, to make sure it's at the right stage. So he does a lot of that throughout his day, interspersed with feeding animals, checking animals, being a vet, driving a tractor, doing all the farming operations, sometimes helping me with logistics of children. And I also work off farm a lot. So I've got a consultancy business, and I'm on the board of Scotland Food and Drink. And I don't know how it works. I really don't. But somehow it does.
Sounds like you're pretty busy then. Yeah.
Is it farm consultancy that you do?
No. Well, sort of. It's kind of food, drink, and agri, and really kind of business consultancy. So at the moment, I'm working with Quality Meat Scotland on their strategic review. I'm also working with a company that does algae production, a meat processing company. It's very different. But, I think being involved in those things, you learn lessons from other people, from other businesses that you can bring back to your own business. And rather than being a distraction, it can be an advantage. So we try our best to balance all the different things that we do so that they're complementary. It tips a lot, but for the most part, it's fairly steady. And I think the most important thing for us as well is it's about being happy, and it's about our family. And never do we want to look back and say we missed that with the kids. We missed enjoying our farm and where we live. So we try to balance it with that as well.
Ben's just put a comment on YouTube. I guess there's not much time for hobbies then.
So not on our part, but definitely from the kids' point of view. But Dan and I were slightly concerned about our fitness levels. So we've started getting up at 5:30 every morning and walk. We've got a kind of hill ground. So we do a circuit and walk round the farm for 45 minutes up the hill and down again, because there's no other time to do it.
Well, crazy. That's brilliant. Just to add in a little bit of recreational exercise in your day to fill in the time.
It's quite good for kind of chatting about what we're going to be doing that day and planning stuff as well, because it's really hard to find the time to sit down and have a business meeting, if that's so. Yeah, we do it on that walk, and it's it ticks both boxes.
That results in fences that need fixed and ditches that need drained, and
exactly. And I see Dave said, apart from drinking wine, that's definitely a hobby, and also the reason I need to do more exercise, because it's got a lot of calories in it.
That's true.
Are the kids keen to get involved as well? Are they looking like young farmers coming through? Or?
No, I wouldn't have said so. So they are involved a little bit. My son's got a little flock of sheep. He's just done his tractor driving course, so he's been out helping to earn extra cash because he likes to go out and about. He's got a girlfriend, that sort of thing, where you need extra money in your pocket. So from that point of view, that's motivating. But neither of them are like Dan and I were, like, constantly wanting to be outside and involved on the farm when we were that age. And we often have conversations about, is it because they look at what we do and they think, Christ, why would I want to do that? Like, why would I want to be working that hard till that time at night when I can go out and do something else? And there's a degree of sympathy for that viewpoint, but we wouldn't have any other way.
Yeah. So sometimes they'll say something and you'll be like, yeah, that makes far too much sense, doesn't it?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I think part of it is that they see the kind of manual labor aspect, but they don't really comprehend the business side of it. So
yeah.
Sorry. Cameron's just coming to say goodnight to me.
No.
Of course.
Good night.
Night.
I'll come up in a minute.
Okay.
Yes, I can't remember what I was saying there. Yeah, they don't really kind of see the business aspect of it, or the fact that you are doing quite a lot of exciting things, exciting decisions, challenging decisions. And I think it takes until you're an adult to fully appreciate the way of life, the place that you live, the freedom you have in terms of land that you've got to go around at 5:30 in the morning. You don't have to jump in your car to go for a walk. That's just stuff you kind of don't comprehend until you're a bit older.
That's definitely the stuff I miss. Not farming anymore is that sort of, I don't know. Every year I miss lambing. It was always so chaotic and hectic, and it's just exhausting. But I don't know. That gets that time of year, and I can just see everybody getting busy. And I'm thinking, I always miss that side of it. It's so rewarding. Lambing is so rewarding. You see just all the wee lambs out in the field. Yeah,
it is. And I think this time of year is, from a farming point of view, it's when you see everything coming to life, whether that's lambing, calving, you see the barley starting to pop through, and that, it's just that greenness of everything. And there's just something exciting in that, and something really rewarding. I mean, harvest time is obviously rewarding too, but there's just something quite special about this time of year.
Yeah, you're definitely more in tune with the seasons and how the time passes when you're farming. I think you see it just more, you're more aware of it anyway, you're more involved in it.
Yeah, and there's nothing more grounding than being covered in animal crap.
Yeah. Lamb diarrhea, first emptying of tummy while you're feeding them. That's a smell that you don't forget.
You don't. And if you ever kind of get ideas that you've gone beyond your station, then it brings you back down, which is good.
It does. Well, I guess we better let you get your wee one off to bed. He'll be waiting
Yeah.
for you.
Yes, I think he will be patiently waiting and wanting to stay up longer. So, but yeah, it's been really lovely to chat to you both and to everybody that's listening. And if anybody's got any other questions, very happy to take a call, answer an email, answer anything on social media. Yeah, very happy.
Perfect. Yeah, well, thank you so much, Alison. Thank you, Kat, for taking on the host duties while I was away. Do you want to introduce next week's guest, Kat, just before we head off?
When I put him in the spot. Oh, I do know who it is because I booked him. It is.
You should, yeah.
Like your face is actually frozen on my screen. No, you're back. So it was like really intense. You're staring at me like, like you better get this right. You were just frozen for a second. It's David from Distilled Events. So he's done everything in the industry. He was manager at I'm gonna get it wrong now, Kalila and Lagavulin for a while, I think. And now he's got his own sort of bespoke whiskey tasting company. So yeah, he's going to have lots of insights into the whiskey world. So yeah, we've got him on next week. Potentially maybe Justina as well, just that she's just moved house. So we're not sure if we'll get her next week. But if it's not next week with David, we'll definitely get her on some other time.
Awesome. Great stuff. Guys, thank you so much. Alison, especially, thanks for letting us geek out on barley. One of the most undiscussed topics, but growing. Pardon the pun. Is really growing as a side industry to the whiskey, and I think people are taking a lot more notice of it. So it's great to see so many questions coming through. People genuinely interested in that. Dominic, yes, 7:00 tomorrow for Mossburn tasting. We will see you there. But yeah, Alison, thank you so much. Thank you, guys. Any questions for those guys who are watching retrospectively, please put them in the chat. We do kind of look back and pick up on that. If we can't answer it, we will for sure send them on to Alison and try and get an answer. So, absolutely. Awesome. Thank you very much, guys. I'm now going to head back up home because Tori will be wondering where on earth I am. She's had baby all day. So I better get home before I'm locked out.
Good luck.
Yeah, good stuff.
Brilliant.
Hey guys, we'll see you all very soon. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.